because otherwise I can't see. Good. The point that we left off with last time, towards the end of Ois Gimel, we're going to finish off Ois Gimel in the Agdama, at least in this version. It's on the front side of the sheet. Rav Kook had spoken to us about the value of Shemitah. We said 2 weeks ago, as being an opportunity to switch back from the relentless capitalistic, argumentative, competitive, market-driven midah to a spirit of generosity that will enable us to come to fruition in the fullest sense of our midas tovas without it being ruined by the day-to-day inner workings of market-driven economic life. We'll close this door here just so that we can hear better. Last week we discussed how the influence of being in Eretz Yisrael within a Shnas HaShemitah deeply impacts who we are as a nation, and deeply impacts the relationship that Eretz Yisrael has with us and that we have with the land. The nation comes to fruition as the Am Skula, Am Hashem, and the land becomes, in the fullest sense of the word, the land of Hashem, because it becomes ever so obviously, totally, availably, readily apparent that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of the world. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Living in Eretz Yisrael during Shnas HaShemitah does not make sense. Doesn't make any sense. How could it be that a whole nation would do such a thing? It only makes sense within the context of this being Am Hashem in the Eretz that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has designated as the place of his Hashkacha Pratis. And we noted that these ideas of hidden miracles the Ramban speaks about throughout his Perush al Torah, that the ideas of the hidden miracles of living in Eretz Yisrael, that is something that comes to the fullest sense of fruition during the Shnas HaShemitah. And Rav Kook puts the stempel on this with the line at the top of page Zayin over here, Shnas Shabbaton Muchrachasi Le'uma V'La'aretz. The land, the year of Shabbos is essential for both the nation and for the land. And then he goes on to describe Shnas Sheket V'Shalva, it is a year of quiet and of tranquility. Be'ein Negesh V'Roide, without anybody pursuing anybody else. What's that din? So you'll see throughout this paragraph, Rav Kook is going to be invoking psukim, midrashe, halacha, and dinim of Hilchos Shemitah to show you how everything that he has described is the nishmas haTorah of what Shemitah is about in halacha. Now, that concept of nishmas haTorah is important to understand because the phraseology nishmas haTorah is used throughout the world of Chassidus, Kabbalah, Musar, Zar, Gra, Ramchal. The idea that the Torah is not simply, this obviously comes from the world of Chazal in many, many places, but it spans the entirety of the expanse of anybody that is speaking about something other than only halacha. Anybody that has spoken about halacha in a broader sense, anybody that has written about halacha in a broader sense, plugs into the concept of nishmas haTorah. To explain very, very simply, this is not what people refer to as the spirit of the law, as an amorphous thing. It's important to understand. That takes on a different understanding within the world of the American legal system. Nishmas halacha, nishmas haTorah, means the aspects of Torah that are expressed in the world of halacha as a practicality, but are far more profound in the sense and sentiment of it being Dvar Hashem. Lemashal, your wife will tell you to change a light bulb and to take out the garbage. Those things are important to do. Everybody knows that. But the non-doing of those things, in theory, is not simply not changing the light bulb and not taking out the garbage. It is a laxity, it is to a certain extent an abandonment, it is rashless of the relationship between a person and their spouse, right? There's, of course, people make mistakes, but somebody that would habitually not do the chores that their spouse wants them to do is indicating a difficulty within that relationship. But in a very profound sense, changing the light bulb and taking out the garbage is indicative of the profundity of that relationship. Doesn't always feel that way. Certainly doesn't always feel that way. Much like it doesn't always feel that we are doing something profoundly spiritual when we put on tefillin in the morning. Doesn't always feel that way. Doesn't always feel that way. The same way that changing the light bulb and taking out the garbage doesn't always feel like an act of unity and love and commitment. But you start to notice what it is when you don't do it. Because your wife doesn't get upset with you kind of proportional to the light bulb that didn't get changed. You understand what I'm saying? Right? It's not, how do they say on the news? It is a disproportionate military response. Yes? That. Feels disproportionate. It's just a light bulb. No, it's not just a light bulb. We all know that, right? It's not just a light bulb.
So that is the spirit of the law.
So the spirit of the law is not, and this is important to understand, is not divorced from the law. In America today, often people talk about the spirit of the law as opposed to the letter of the law. Right? You're going to follow the spirit of the law as opposed to the letter of the law. In halacha, the spirit of the law is that which encapsulates and is expressed in the letter of the law. Today, when you see these things like bantered around in the news and the media, no, we don't care about the letter of the law. We care about the spirit of the law. By the way, that was popularized by Christianity, right? We don't have to observe the letter of the law. We observe the spirit of the law, right? Right, and we can tell you what the spirit is, right? Basic nishma, right?
The spirit of the law is even greater than the law.
So it is and it isn't. It is and it isn't. If you would tell your wife, I love you so much from today to tomorrow, I'm just not changing the light bulb. You understand? Right? I love you like crazy. I'm just not going to do any of the things that you want me to do. This is not a good recipe for, marital bliss. Yes? It's not how it goes. It's not how it operates. I mean, because halacha is a relationship. But if a person says, I will change every light bulb, I'll take out every garbage can, and I will never smile at you. So you got problems, right? You got issues. It's not. That's the nishma satara. The nishma satara. So this is also kedai to understand within the context of many midrashim to this extent, especially around the time of Matan Torah. Like the Zohar Kodesh explains that the Torah was given an eish shechira on al gabe eish levana, right? There's a black fire on the white fire. What does it mean? Black fires, white fires. What exactly this is? So the samus, which is Yarzeit last Shabbos, the samus points out in the Mamarim on Chag HaShavuos that is also found in the Bnei Yisachar in Chodesh Sivan Eis Gimel, that the Torah is given first and foremost as a nishma satara. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, like Hared Mekudeshes Li B'Tabasu, right? Let's have a relationship. That's called Eish Levan. It has no definition. It has no designation. It is abstract. It is amorphous. That is then carved into Prate Halacha. It's carved in. That's the Eish Shchara, the black fire that is on the white fire. Meaning, if you take a look at a Sefer Torah scroll, right? You'll see it's white. And then there is black lettering on it. There's a unique din by a Sefer Torah. You all know that if it's missing a letter, it's possible. What if two letters are touching each other? It has to have hekav gvil. It has to be mukhav gvil. It's also possible. Why is it possible? You can clearly see the tzuras ha'os, right? You see an aleph and it's touching a beis. Why does it need to have a hekav gvil? Says the samus, because you carved out too much. You carved out too much. right? Meaning you have the white fire of the Torah. That is the abstract, amorphous, emotional, deeply, profoundly connected relationship that we have with the Rebbeinu Shalom. That is expressed within dinim. That's the letters of the Torah. You carved it out into the din. You went and you carved out a little too much there. So you have more letter of the law than spirit of the law. That's possible. That's possible. That has to have a heck of gvil. You have to have it surrounded by the Eish Levana. With that in mind, what Rav Kook is going to do in this paragraph is show us very beautifully and very poetically how half a dozen of the halachas of Shemitah relate to everything that he's just said. That if we would open up Mishnayos Shvius, we would open up any of the contemporary halachic svarim today on Hilchos Shemitah, so you'd read about the halachas of Shemitah, what it is, what the dinim are. Rav Kook is about to show us that everything that we've just described is manifest in the halachas. So he writes as follows. First thing that he quotes is that it's going to be a shnas sheket v'shalva be'ein negesh v'roide. It's going to be a year of tranquility, a year of peace, a year of harmony, without anybody oppressing, pushing each other. What does that mean? The pasuk says, "Lo yigas Yisrael ve'es achiv ki kara shmita la'Hashem." What's that din?
Taking money, borrowed money.
Shmitas ksofim, right? You lend money to me. Shemitah rolls around. So the din is an ism de'araisa for you to chase me and say, pay me back. Kikar Shemitah l'Hashem. No. Also. By the end of the year, if I haven't paid you back, it's over. And you're not allowed to push me the whole year. Give it back to me, give it back to me, give it back to me. That's also an issue daraisa.
Then they had to do the principle.
Principle is unique. The principle was established in the second half of the Bayit Sheni period by Hillel. The reason that the principle was established was because the nature of borrowing and lending changed radically. We should just point out, because you mentioned it, and it's correct to understand in terms of the halachas of Shemitah's Ksafim, because this is negeh, because by the end of this year, everybody's going to sign a principle, right? That's the popular minhag Ashkenaz, at the very least, is to sign a principle at the end of Shemitah, before Rosh Hashanah this year. The din is as follows, that you lend me money, I pay you back, and if I don't pay you back, then Shemitah is... Let's just define and differentiate here, because this is essential to understand in terms of the halachas of Shemitah. Otherwise, the reason that I'm saying this, and I'm going to be very careful here, is because people like to point to principle as like rabbinic finagling of the system of halacha. That is absolutely not the case. That is mamish not the case. There is a din in the Torah that if I need money, and you have money, that I come to you and I say, these are my needs, what is your obligation? No. Not to lend. To give. The obligation is tzedakah. The obligation is to give money, right? Right? Whatever you need, right? Correct. So I say, this is what I need. And you say, I have the availability, I have expendable income, I can give you that money. The din is that you give it to me. Meaning, assuming that I'm honest and you're honest and there's no lying, there's no cheating, that's the din. That's the din. It's not just, I can make kiddush for you. It also means that we look after each other. This is a contract of brotherhood and love amongst all Bnei Yisrael, that if I need and you have, so then you give me, and then please God, it never switch up, but if you need and I have, then I give you. That's just how it works. So where does lending come in? Where does lending come in? The din is that if you have, you give. Why would anybody lend money? Right. So then, when do you give and when do you lend? It's an important thing to understand in terms of the din, right? So when do you have an obligation to lend?
I guess giving is tzedakah.
Yes.
And lending is you don't need it for food on the table. You need it for a short period of time. I got to pay the rent, and I'll give it back to you next month.
What's the assumption of a halva'ah?
You don't need it, but you need it temporarily.
Then I'm going to pay it back, right? Stam halva'ah shloshim yom. What does that mean? Is that it's short-term loans, right? Meaning I need a little bit of breathing room. This month, My crop is coming in late. I got to buy food for the family. Next month, I'm gonna harvest. It's gonna be good. Okay, I'll take it to the market. I'll sell it. I'll give you back. Stam halva shloshim yom. That's how Chazal understood. Right. That's what it is. It's a cash flow problem, right? We're struggling a little bit of hard times, but I'll have the money next month. Shloshim yom, I'll pay you back. Stam halva shloshim yom. There are halvos that can be extended beyond that, meaning the circumstances of my life and economics is such that I made an investment, it's going to pay off in a year's time, and I'm getting a loan for a year. I can stipulate that on the shtar. These are all the dinim in Nizikin. I can stipulate all these things. That's fine. No, nothing wrong with that. But a stam halva shloshim yom means that it's a cash flow problem. Most of the time, 90%, 95%, 98% of the time, that cash flow problem is resolved within the time frame that a person expects. That's how the Torah anticipates. If you are anticipating that that's not the case, then the person doesn't need halva. What they need is tzedakah. Yes? And somebody says, I don't have, how are you planning on paying me back? Yeah. The Eibishter is going to help. That's called tzedakah. Right? That's not called a halva. Now, you might call it a halva and make the guy feel good about himself, maybe. Right? But that's called tzedakah. Halva means I'll give you, and within that there is an issur of taking ribis, right? You're not allowed to charge them interest because I'm helping you out. You don't need my tzedakah. If you need my tzedakah, I'll give you tzedakah, but you don't need my tzedakah. What you need is cash flow. So I'll give you a little bit. Right? This is a payday loan without a loan shark. You understand? Like that's what this is. That's what a stam halva is. The Torah says, in Kesef Talvei, you are not allowed to chase the guy, right? Don't give him hell for it. Don't give him grief for it. Why? Because most of the time it's going to work out. Now, mid-Second Temple period, the entire economic structure of Judea had changed. The world was this isn't time for history, but Lemaisa, people were on average taking loans that they couldn't pay, right? Meaning that they couldn't pay. Right? Everybody was borrowing money in ways that they had no real plans. The entire economic structure was like taken over by Roman occupation. It was a different world, which meant that nobody was interested in lending money anymore because the return on that was almost guaranteed to fail. Right? You weren't going to see the money, and people didn't have the wherewithal to say, look, I've got a little bit of extra money now, but like the world is in fluctuation. Everything is volatile. I don't know what's going to be with my family, with my parents, with my business in a year, 2 years, 3 years time. So I'm not going to lend you the money now because if Shemitah rolls around in another 3 years, the chance of me having seen my money by then is Efes Biltecha Galin L'Maisa Mashiach, right? That's what we're aiming for here. So if that's going to be the case, so nobody wants to lend money anymore, Hillel comes up with a mechanism to enable people to still lend money. This is not a halachic loophole to avoid being mekayim the din mid'oraisa chas v'shalom. He's trying to ensure the stability of a Judean economy. This is a very different situation. It's important to understand that within the context of that. Just for fun, you should be aware that Rabbeinu Tam records in Maseches Gittin in the fourth parak. He has it's somewhat unique. Certainly amongst the Balei Tosfos, he has a whole poem about the godless of Pruzbal, right? The godless of Pruzbal, what was achieved in Pruzbal, the halachas and the ideas, it's a magnificent thing. Pruzbal was a tremendous chiddush because it enabled people to stay afloat and to be able to still lend to each other. It wasn't chas v'shalom trying to pervert the dinim of the Torah. So that's just important to understand. In these areas, it's essential, one, to understand the history and also to understand the nishma of Torah. And so, like, who's the Torah talking to and what is the goal that the Torah is trying to achieve here without necessarily even being derish taimei dekra, right? Although Musar of almost all of the Rishonim is to be derish taimei dekra, just not la halacha, right? We do attempt to understand the reasons behind mitzvahs. We don't paskin as a result of those things, right? That's important to understand. Conversation, but not for now. Okay. The din of Shemitah is that you're not going to oppress your friend. What does that mean? It means that when I lend money to you, I walk away from that. Meaning, in an ideal situation, right? I walk away from that, and I'm not going to bother you. You're not going to need to avoid me at Kiddush. You understand? It's a shnas shalva v'sheket. Yikar Shemitah Hashem. Third line, he says, shnas shivyon u'margoya. It is a year of shivyon, of equality, margoya and relaxing of tensions. His pashtus haneshama beharcha v'asa. It is the expansion of the soul in its broadness. El hayosher eloki, to the justice, the justness, the straightness of Hashem. And mechalkel chaim bechesed, that, as we say in davening, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mechalkel chaim bechesed. He sustains life bechesed. 6 years out of the 7 years, we are happily balei tzedakah, balei chesed, right? But our chesed comes with strings attached, right? I'll give you money, put my name on the building, right? I'll give you money if you, friend of mine, a number of years ago, a colleague, I will not mention anything more of this, told me that there was a member of his shul that came to him with a very large amount of money and said to him, I will give you this check for this campaign that you are doing, so long as you are not mechabed so-and-so. Right? Not mechabed so-and-so. Right? So he said, thank you, but no thank you. Yeah, right? You understand? Mechal kechaim, but strings attached. No. Says Rav Kook, Shemitah is mechal kechaim b'chesed. I don't know, we look after each other b'chesed. There's no competition anymore. How is this expressed? He says, Ein rechush pratim mesuyam. I don't have private property. I mean, I own my land, but I don't have private property. My property is available to everybody. Come in, pick an apple. Right? Come in, enjoy. It's yours as much as it is mine. And without being particular, being persnickety. Right? And yeah, you can't come in now. It's now. Don't you see it says lunch break from 12 to 1? Yeah, right? Chalila. What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours. This is Mechal Kechaim Chesed. So it says, "V'sholem Eloki sheyer al kol asher neshama apai," and the peace of Hashem is ruling over everything that breathes, everything that's alive. Says the pasuk, "V'hayisa Shabbos Ha'aretz lachem le'ochla." The Shabbos of the land will be for you to eat. To eat. Remember that word, to eat. For all standards of society, for all classes, everybody comes to eat the same. Open table. For your animals as well, and the wild animals. Not just your behemoths, right? Your behemoths is your investment. But like, the wild ibex that you see in the Judean hills, they come and eat your apples just as much. You don't lock the fence so that they can't come in either. Come eat everything. There is no particularities that will destroy the transcendence of the yield of this land. And the beauty, the glory of the wealth of the land, hamiskara al yideh hamischar mishtakachas, that becomes coarse through normative trade, that's forgotten. Right? When a farmer comes home with a massive crop, so he's already calculating how much is it worth, what am I going to make from it, what's the buying price, what's the selling price. You forget the bracha, the great bracha of what I've achieved here, what the land has given me, what the Ribbon Shalom has given me through this land. That's all forgotten, because now it's just a question of like, how do I monetize this thing? So all of a sudden, Shemitah, no, you walk into your field, you see it's growing without any of your effort, and you go, whoa, this is amazing. Look at that. No monetizing. So here comes a couple of halachas. The Gemara says, many of these things are brought down in the Midrash Halacha, right, in Taras Kanim. Le'achla, the din is, lachem yeh le'achla, you have to eat it, v'loi l'schara, there's an issur of doing business with it. Can't do business with it. That you can't keep a bunch of apples and sell it. Ayin toiva v'hoikara ne'emana ba'a l'chol birkas Hashem asher b'pri ha'aretz. The great generosity of Hashem The bracha of Hashem is brought through the Pri Haaretz, the fruit of the land. La'uchla, Chazal darshan, la'uchla, don't sell it, la'uchla, v'lo lehefsed. Don't waste it either. Can't throw it out. I think there's horrifying statistics that like a third of all American foods are thrown out unopened. A third. Sugar. Amount of wasted. Like it's a ridiculous thing. There's people that are starving, and supermarkets are throwing things out, restaurants are throwing things out, caterers are throwing things out. A third of all food that is prepared, say what? Farmers, dumping, right? I think during some of the heights of COVID, the milk farmers were dumping hundreds of thousands of gallons of milk. Yeah, couldn't get it anywhere, right? Couldn't get it to market.
It happened in the Depression because
Yeah.
tried to price up, and they thought that it was too much of the stuff.
Right. So that's the nakuda here.
Have that still-
Destroying, in order to artificially inflate the price of something, that's not appreciating the bracha of Hashem, right? It's dafka this point that Rav Kook is saying that don't throw it out. Don't throw it. You can't waste it. As a private individual, you can't waste it. As a society, you can't waste it.
Government pays sometimes for that.
Right, for them to dump it. But yeah, 100%. And that's all to keep the economy in check, right? Rav Kook is saying, no, that's not how it works in Shas. Now, that's how it has to work in America, because there's the economy here is controlled by people. The economy in Eretz Yisrael is controlled by the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says, I want to make sure that your midos don't get wrecked, right? That your midos are not wrecked. You have to imagine for a moment, what does it do to a farmer that has his whole life has been building up like a milk production industry that dumps hundreds of thousands of gallons of milk? What does it do to him? Right? Culling their herds, right? What does it do to them? Right? It ruins them as people, for sure. There is no way that the guy comes home that day with the same midos that when he left that morning. It's not the same thing. It doesn't happen. It's impossible. Every 7 years, there is a year that is dedicated to the restoration of national midos. That's what we're doing. So he says, "Ve'ha'adam chayzer el tivai hara'ana." Now, Rav Kook's got a big chiddush here. He says, as a result of the tikkun hamidos that a person undergoes, that society as a whole undergoes during the Shnas HaShemitah, a person returns to their natural state of joyfulness, of exuberance. Ad asher lo yitztarich lirefuas lemachalos, until you don't need doctors. The doctors get a year off. Why? Because if the land is healthy and society is healthy and everybody's midas are healthy, then their bodies are healthy too. And Rav Kook writes about this in the beginning of Aris HaTshuva, and he writes about this here, and he writes about this in a number of places throughout the Ksavim, that in a perfect state of being, of society, where the world is operating optimally, where society is operating optimally, where people are acting in accordance with Ratzon Hashem, they will not get sick. That's it. If you're doing the right thing, you don't need a doctor. And we noted this when we saw the Orach Chaim, that the more that a person is plugged in and connected to Hashem, the more that every aspect of them is beseder. This is just a piece, and we're not going to get into this whole discussion, but whenever people say, you went to a particular tzaddik and he told you to do a particular thing, and that's for refuah. That's not like hocus pocus heebie-jeebie stuff. Let's understand that what Rav Kook is saying, what the Orach Chaim HaKadosh is saying, what all the Sfarim are saying across the board, is that machalos are indicative of something wrong beyond the individual. Now, sometimes the individual is, unfortunately, at the whim of the world around them. It's not always the case that a person will have perfect midos and will be healthy. Sometimes it'll be that the world that we live in is decrepit and broken, and so we are influenced by that. But if a person would have good midos, have appropriate midos, and society would have appropriate midos, so then people don't get sick. Right? Meaning The individual is b'shleimus and society is b'shleimus, and the klal and the prat both are b'shleimus. So then, every prat of the nation, every prat of every prat. My pinky finger is healthy because so he says, "V'adam chayzer al tiva aranon asher ad asher lo yitzarech l'refuas la'machalos shehin ba'os beruban al yidei harisos ha-mishkal shel chaim." What happens is there's a perversion, there's an off balance that exists in our connection to divrei Elokim Chaim. We are not plugged in, we are not connected, we are not appropriately charged up. So that's where it comes from. From a distance from the purity of nature, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it. Like one of the tzaddikim points out, Bereshis bara Elokim hashamayim v'asaretz. Bara is lashon brius. Bereshis bara means Hashem created the world healthy. It was a healthy world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not create a sick world. He created a healthy world. We messed it up, right? It's human beings that messed it up. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a healthy world that was supposed to be healthy. If not for the fact that we were being chayte against Teva and chayte against our Teva and chayte against each other. So then everything would be good. It says, we've distanced ourselves from the purity of physical and spiritual nature. We've perverted both. And now another din. You'll see this expressed here. V'loi lim lugma. What does lim lugma mean? To gulp it. So this is the din of v'loi l'rfuah. V'loi l'asais mimenu apiktivizin. That's how, right? That's a digestive medicine, right? To help you expel foods that are harming you, right? That's the din. Not to gulp it as a potion. There's an isur mid'araisa of taking the fruit of Shemitah and turning it into something that's to cure diseases. So he says. So what we have here is la'echla, you have to eat it, don't do business with it. La'echla, you have to eat it, you're not allowed to dump it. La'echla, you have to eat it, but you can't use it for medicine. What's the nishma satira of all of this is talking about a utopian year for society of return to our basic essence as being V'atem adveikim Hashem lekechem chaim kulchem hayom. All of this comes down to ruach kedusha ve'atzilus shofuch al pnei kol, a spirit of transcendence, atzilus, and closeness to Hashem, the highest level, is now spread out over everything. Shnas Shabbaton Ha'aretz, Shabbos L'Hashem. It is a year of Shabbos L'Hashem. Now, all of this is so far described Shabbos for the individual, Shemitah for the nation. So what's Yovel? How does Yovel relate to this? So that's this paragraph here, and we'll see, in the interest of time, we'll see if we can give a short introduction to this, and then Be'ez we'll go back to next week. It says, B'shana zu mizgalet tziviyana shel umma b'klil hayda, the beauty of the nation is revealed in this year. Bimkar rucha ha'eloki, the expression of the inner soul of what the nation is, as we've explained many times. Ve'ara zu haba achas l'sheva shanim, this reigniting of the spirit of the nation is every 7 years. Drags with it these ascendant godly ideologies. Every 7 years, there's this national reset where people come back to their midas tovos. That slowly but surely what ends up happening is that a person, as they grows with this idea of Shemitah, the same way that the individual grows with the idea of Shabbos. The Shabbos that you have when you're, a bar mitzvah is very different than the Shabbos that you have when you're raising children, which is very different from the Shabbos that you have when you are having over your grandchildren. It's a different Shabbos. It's a different Shabbos. And slowly but surely, the collective of those Shabbos impacts who you are. You hope that Shabbos when you're 95 years old is different from when you're 15. You hope it's a different Shabbos. If it's the same Shabbos, there's something wrong. Shabbos is supposed to change, you're supposed to change with it. You're supposed to grow with it. And the same thing is true about Shemitah on a national level. The Shemitah that you have, the first time that you experience Shemitah is a very different Shemitah than the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth. It's not always the case that a person has many more than that. Right? It's not always the case. But you have, an Alta Zaidi telling his children, I remember the first time that I had a Shemitah, Gavaldik, and then the next time, yeah. It grows on you. It's a wholesome experience. What happens is that until these cyclical events, 6 years in 1 year and 6 years in 1 year, that draw a tremendous amount of power and prowess and intellectual, emotional, spiritual maturity. All of this operates on a person. It flows through us and to us. And then it culminates in a larger sense, in a larger cycle. With more significance. That has the capacity not just to lift up the individuals as Shabbos does. And not just society in a snapshot of society. This is generational. There is a generational impact to the cyclical nature of the Shemitah 6 years. Shemitah 6 years. Shemitah 6 years. It's cyclical. Hayovel, the Yovel at the end of 49 years. Zoit kufa haras halam. This is the time of haras halam, of the rebirth of the world. There's a feeling of a culmination of something. Harukat miusaid hachofesh ha'eloki ha'elyon, that is extended from the foundation of freedom from a godly sense. And that is what Be'ez Hashem we will talk about next time. Thank you so much. And have a beautiful evening and a beautiful Shabbos.
Thank you.
Especially the farmers and the